Welcome back to the channel, everybody. Before we start this video off, I just want to jump on here real quick and apologize. This video might be a little confusing. Most of the time I do my filming during the weekends because I work during the week. But given the recent events that's happened here, like I mentioned in my last video, we had a disaster zone in the kitchen there. The hot water tank rusted out and we had to replace the floor. Then we made a couple of supply runs over to the flood victims in Tennessee and North Carolina, as well as adopting that little shithead right there. So hadn't been much time to film any content. I've been working on a video over the last month. I got some of the footage saved up. So all of this may not be in chronological order, but I'm going to do my best to put it in a orderly flat fashion and try not to confuse you. So without further ado, let's dive right into it, y'all. In this video, I'm going to mainly focus on the Fury and the updates to that car. I do need to make an updated video about this budget beater here. It did excellent going back and forth to Tennessee. The only thing I've done to this thing recently is I put a set of axles in the front of it. I didn't make a video on that because it was dark and I did that overnight. But it's pretty straightforward. I mean, I had jacked this thing up and put 2 axles in the front of it in an hour and a half. So wasn't that big of a deal. I picked up 2 axles off of Amazon in a package deal for like $130 shipped to the house. So can't really beat that. And like I said, it did great going back and forth to Tennessee. We had this thing packed to the gills with supplies. Had a little squat in the rear because we had like 15 or 20 cases of water in the back, and along with a bunch of other dry goods and canned food, baby diapers, baby wipes, just the essential needs, y'all. So I will try to make an updated video on this thing. I need to get out here and clean it up. As you can see, it's really dirty from the road trip. But I think it was like 300 and some miles round trip. So not too awful far, but for a car that's pushing 300,000 miles and with the axles, that put us right at the $3,000 budget mark, all in, all done. That's including everything we've done to it. So I need to make an updated video on this. I got a 10-inch in-dash navigation screen that we need to do a review on. Like, you know, I've got Black Hawks on this thing, Black Hawk tires. They did excellent going back and forth. We did the video on the big brake kit from Detroit Axle. So just mainly about that radio, the in-dash navigation. I need to make an updated video on that. And other than that, there's nothing really left to do with this project besides drive it. Okay, so back to the Fury. Hopefully the third time's the charm on these brakes. I have ordered every brake combination for this car that I thought was possible, but everyone seems to be wrong. I think where I was going wrong is I was actually measuring the drums instead of measuring the brake shoes. So if you measure the drums for the 2 3/4 inch brakes on the front, the drums measure out 11 by 3. So I ordered everything for 11 by 3 inch brakes. Same way with the back. If you got the 11 by 2s, I measured the drum, which measured out 11 by 2.5 inches on the drum, which was wrong because I should have took my measurements off the brake shoes, which you live and you learn. So now I got brake shoes for the front and rear. I got to track down a set of brake drums for the rear, which I think I found a set on eBay. I think it's Raybestos 2955Rs, if I'm not mistaken on the part number. Those are 11 by 2 inch drums. And O'Reilly's claims that they can get the front 11 by 2 3/4. So that should hopefully solve our brake issue. Boy, do I have some catching up to do with y'all. As you can see, if you watched the last video, we got the Fury turned around here. I still got to do the rear shocks on it and the rear brakes and give that rear end, the whole back half of the car, a light undercoating the paint before winter time comes. But before we address that, we got to address a few issues up front. As you can see, I got a leaking transmission line, which is no big deal. We'll tidy that up and fix that. In other news, I got me a new partner in crime here. This fella followed us home from the local animal shelter about 2 weeks ago. 6 months old. He's been in the animal shelter for 4 months, so he got dropped off at the shelter when he was like 2 months old. But we decided on naming him Colt. He's a pretty good old boy so far. But getting back to the Fury here, as you can see, I've got this thing parked on a pretty steep incline, and it's obvious that we've got a pinion seal leak right there at the rear end. So that might be something I'll have to address here soon, but hopefully it can at least get us through a few shakedown test drives. I think it's just leaking because it's parked on that steep incline. And all this underneath here needs a fresh coat of paint just to keep it from rusting anymore. The exhaust system's going to be completely redone. It's just, it's cobbled together with a bunch of clamps, and most of it's rusty anyway, so I need to eventually do leaf spring bushings on this thing. And we already got the air shocks to replace those ones that's on the rear. We just picked up the kit from Monroe. But just for shits and giggles, I'm gonna pump some air into those and see if those things still have any life into them, or if the line's even still connected or not. And this will be interesting to see if this thing actually raises up any, because pretty sure these things ain't no good. How about that? It's taking there. I don't hear nothing leaking out. Felt like I seen the rear end rising. Cook. That's what it is. The line from the driver's side is missing. But no big deal. I didn't figure they were any count. I just thought it'd be worth a try. Actually, I think the one on the passenger side actually held some air. Looking at the rear of the car, it looks like it's sitting cockeyed now. But we'll go ahead and replace those. That's no big deal. As you can see, I got about 3 foot too much fuel line on there, but I didn't want to cut that long piece. That's the last long piece I had off a big roll, so I just kind of threw that up there. I'm gonna go pick up a Edelbrock hard fuel line kit for that. We're gonna move that coil. We're gonna put the super stock over here on the firewall, and we're just gonna tidy up all this wiring in general. I picked up some new battery cables. We're gonna address those. New terminals. Gonna actually put the battery hold down in it, and let's see, we're going to put wire loom on all that stuff on the firewall, delete all these unnecessary wires. I'm going to get these heater hoses up in their proper location so they don't fall down in the exhaust manifold. Just some basic housekeeping up front. I'm going to start by finding somewhere to mount this vintage Excel Super Cool. I picked this up at one of our local cruise ins. They have a swap meet about 3-4 times a year during the summertime, and I picked this up last year with a bunch of parts for the Fury that's been holding on to it. To pair with this, I've got a new set of points to go in this distributor. I'm going to do eventually change the plugs in this thing. I got a new set of plugs in there. And if I remember correctly, these are new wires. I put these on last year when we first got the car, and the cap and the rotor button. So I think what I'm going to shoot for is to mount this thing in between the radiator and the horns here. If I remember correctly, this is where the factory overflow tank was, I think. But with this aftermarket radiator, I moved the overflow tank to beside the battery, so that frees up some space here. Plus we can get it right here. It's straight up and down. It's a straight shot to the distributor, and I can run my coil wire and my negative and positive wire in a nice loom straight to this. So that'll work pretty good. Now I've got that XL super coil mounted to the front inner radiator support there. Nice and tucked away, out of the way, away from the heat. Just got one bolt in this bracket right now. If I can, most of the time I try to get away without having to drill any extra holes, but it's pretty solid. We'll see what it does. I'm gonna wait and finish wiring it up, because I'm gonna have to get a longer coil wire to go from here to there. I might actually have one in the building, but by eliminating that coil there, that'll make room for that fuel line kit that I'm gonna install and clean everything up on the intake. So now I'm going to turn my attention to this battery cable situation. I picked up a new piece of positive wire, 4 gauge, like 4 foot. I'm going to run that down to the starter, back up to the battery, and then I'm also going to run a new starter relay wire to it. And the ground cable I have here is pretty heavy duty, and it's new. But the problem is, it's like 6 foot long, and it's got these pre-crimped on battery terminals from the factory. So what I'm going to do is, I only need like half of that. I only need like 3 foot for this thing to route it nice and neat. So I'm going to cut that. That way I'll still have this length of negative cable with the terminal connected to it and 3 foot wire, and then that way I can put new terminals, this style terminal on it. That way I can add, if I need to add a positive post or a negative post, I can add that to it. It's the only bad thing about these pre-crimped connections, you only got that one lead. So let me trim that up and we'll see how that goes. Battery cable down to length. This can still be used perfectly fine on another project. It'll actually just about work for this if I wanted to use this style terminal on it, because it'll still reach the negative cable just fine. But I'll throw that in the spare parts pile, and we've got this end already connected to the cylinder head. So, and I left my room a little slack, left myself a little slack here to route this thing nice and neat. I'll trim this down to its final size and put a proper battery terminal on it, and that project will be done. Okay y'all, so it's another day. I'm still working on wiring upgrades on the Fury here. Right now I'm in the process of measuring out the positive cable from the battery to the starter, and as you can see, this one has seen better days. It's definitely in need of upgrade. The good thing about this deal is it's a shorter piece of wire, which means less resistance, and it's also a heavier gauge wire, which in turn means less resistance. So we should have better performance out of the entire electrical system just by upgrading the positive and negative cables on this whole system here. I still got a bunch of tidying up to do back here. I'm just basically cleaning up right now. I just want to jump here and show y'all that positive cable, how beat up it was. While I'm in here, I'm going to show y'all what I'm doing to clean up this bulkhead connection. As you can see, it's pretty corroded. The grease is dried up in there. Same way with the plug side of them. All the plugs are cruddy and nasty on the inside. So what I'm going to do here is picked up some CRC electrical parts cleaner. This is specifically for cleaning electrical components. I'm going to spray it up in the bulkhead connection and the plugs. And then I got a soft bristle toothbrush I'm going to clean it out with. Then I'm going to repack it with some fresh dielectric grease and reinstall everything. Now I say it looks much better. That way we won't have to worry about any future corrosion. And if I had to service this plug again, the grease should allow this plug-in to come off a whole lot easier. So let's reinstall the connections here and we can finalize the work in this general area of the wiring department. So the last time you seen this, I think we were working on repairing that fusible link, which we did that and everything turned out great on it. But while I was underneath there, I also tidied up some other wiring issues. So let's pop the hood and show you what we did. Alright, so hopefully we don't have any surprises underneath here. It's been a couple weeks. So I'm not sure exactly what I covered in the last video, but I do know we were working on that fusible link, which I got all of that tidied up and squared away. I need to put a piece of wire loom over this to make it look a little better. So I did end up putting the factory regulator, voltage regulator back on it. I picked up a unit from, I forget the name of it. It was from O'Reilly's. It was actually a made in America part, and it was no good out of the box. But a lot of folks say that those, even though they're stamped made in America, on the bottom of the actual part and not the box, the actual part had made in USA on it. Some folks still claim that they're made in China. So I don't know how they can get by with that. It seems like false advertisement, but nonetheless, it was bad out of the box. So I ended up putting the factory one back on it. I deleted some of the wiring that run against the rear firewall there. Some of the extra wiring somebody had added, and I also went ahead and put some wire loom just to protect those wires that were running through that. These little metal clips, you know, they can chafe real easy. Okay, I also added a new power cable down to the starter. New battery terminals there. New ground cable. New terminals there. And we zip tied all this up nice and neat. Got it on the firewall. And what else did we do? We installed this Excel Super Stock old school coil. Got the ballast mounted right beside of it. I also installed that hardline fuel kit from Edelbrock. Just cleaned up the routing of the fuel system a whole lot. It's got a provision for fuel pressure gauge on it, which I need to replace that. That's supposed to be a liquid fuel gauge, but it lost all its liquid. So I don't think it's giving an accurate reading. And let's see, what else did we do? So what's on the table for now? I need to fix small transmission line leaks. I'm not sure if the rubber hose has got a crack in it. I need to go in there and put a flare on those ends of the hard lines just to give that hose something to bite to. I think it's just leaking around the hose clamp and the hose. Oh, I also need to install the sway bar. I got the bushing kit in there, and I just need to clean up the brackets and paint them so we can put the front sway bar back on it. And I need to do a plug change in it. We need to check the timing on this thing and then make sure our carburetor's dialed in completely. The weather's starting to change here, so we might have to make a small adjustment on that Edelbrock. And I'll move on to another issue that I found. Redneck key. Y'all don't tell nobody. But during the course of this thing sitting here over the last year, You may have seen some previous videos where I talked about how solid this trunk floor was, which is pretty amazing for a Mopar. Well, the trunk gasket has started to deteriorate, and I also noticed water gathering in this taillight bucket, and you can see it's starting to surface rust here. So I need to fix the gasket for that taillight, which I don't know if it's a rubber gasket. It looks like a rubber gasket here coming out of the bottom. I don't know if that's even available anymore or not, but I need to fix that, address that issue. And then while I was in here cleaning out some of the junk that was in here, getting ready to shoot some paint on this thing, I discovered this little surprise. So what was once our rust-free trunk pan is no longer rust-free. So that will definitely be a project that gets moved to the front before that thing gets any worse, because I do not want to be replacing the trunk pan in this thing. And I know it's just an old C body. I mean, a lot of people don't care about these big cars. It's not an A or B or E body, so a lot of folks tend not to care about these. A lot of them got smashed up in demo derbies, which is sad to say, because I think they got some pretty cool body lines. And with the right wheel and tire package and stance, they look pretty tough. What most people would do is take this old license plate that was laying in the trunk and cover it up like that. Which I'm not knocking against that. To each his own. And I'm definitely not a body man, as I've said before. But I think I can do something a little bit better than the license plate patch job, because the end goal with this car is, me and the old lady want to take it on like power tour, like more of long-term cruise deals. And with the huge trunk this thing has, it'd be perfect to haul our luggage, coolers, all our supplies that we might need, a breakdown kit, spare tire, you know, what have you, whatever you might need for a longer road trip. I'd like to keep this trunk sealed up nice and tight and dry. So I think I'm gonna end up doing maybe a fiberglass patch on that. I'm not sure. I don't have access to a welder. If I did, being that it's in the trunk, I would try to patch that with some sheet metal. I'm looking into possibly buying that titanium little 110 flux core welder from Harbor Freight, but hadn't exactly pulled the trigger on it yet. I'm not a welder, so that would be definitely a learning curve for me. So at very minimum, we're going to vacuum this thing out. I'm going to hit it with a wire brush, try to break up some of this loose paint. We're going to come in and hit it with some rust stopper and give it a coat of paint to prevent it from rusting any further. And then I need to address the bottom side of it. If you didn't notice, I left the drain plugs out while it was parked during the winter time. On the off chance that some water did get in here, it had a way to drain out. I know this thing's been parked several different ways, but I got the 3 main drain plugs pulled out on each side, trying to give that water a way to exit the trunk so it doesn't sit in here. But this spot was covered up by this box of heater hose, so I'm not sure if this box held the moisture down on it or what happened there, but you can see some discoloration right there. All that seems solid, but we're going to address it before it gets any farther. As far as the interior goes, I just need to get in here and clean up. I did a lot of wiring repair, and we installed those triple gauge set down there from, I think it's Equus or EQS or something like that. Also had their tack to match. And I did get the fuel gauge and the factory heat hand working. So everything on the dash right now, well, not everything. I don't think the speedometer works. The amp meter is definitely not working because I disconnected that. And of course the factory clock is not working. So really the only thing on the dash we got working is the heat hand and the fuel hand, which that's the only thing that's mattered to me. I got the rear seat kind of pulled out right now because I'm going to get in there and vacuum all those acorns out. Was just making sure we didn't have any rust issues in there. we got to come back and deal with this spot that we fixed last year where the Bondo busted out, but we'll deal with that when we get to it. At least right now it's got pour 15 on it, so it killed the rust from getting any further, and that seems to be holding up pretty good. So with that being said, I think I'm going to stop right here. There was a quick update for y'all on the Fury. That way I can get these videos in order, post this, and then the next video we can start out fresh. I got a brand new pair of air shocks for the rear. Like I said, I got all the brake stuff besides the rear drums. I need to get those. And we need to fix that trunk pan and put some undercoating under the rear of it here. So we got plenty to keep us busy. I'm going to get this video edited and posted up. That way when the old lady comes home, she can watch the dog. He's just into everything right now. If I jack this thing up and try to do any work underneath of it, he's going to be right here on top of me. He's a character, that's for sure. So, appreciate y'all for watching. Stay tuned for the next video. We'll see y'all later.